Everybody, welcome to the video. It's Tuesday, August 17th. We're breaking down this massive 15-game slate that we have over on DraftKings today. And I'll tell you right now, with such a big slate, you'd think there'd be a lot of good pitching options, but there really isn't. I have a few guys listed here. One of them is coming off the IL, but with that being said, there's a lot of good stacks to talk about, so they kind of offset each other. But anyway, if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. I'll be happy to have you. Link is down below in the description for that. There's a couple hundred of us over there if you do want to join. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're a new signee over on PrizePicks, you can use code CPENN to get a free money bonus. It's an instant deposit match to $100 when you use code CPENN and tell them I sent you. But I think that's it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. As always, we'll start with the pitchers and move on to the bets. And like I was saying, there is not a lot of options here. But Corbin Burnes, $10,200. He's your ace of the slate. And I would have a hard time not playing Corbin Burnes today, whether you're playing cash games, tournaments. I'd almost be tempted to hit the lock button today and just ride or die with Corbin Burnes. Like if he scores 0, so be it. I think the upside is just way higher than any other pitcher on today's slate. St. Louis is a team that really won't strike out too much versus righties, but they lack a lot of power. They're a much better team versus lefties, and then you have a 3.15 implied team total here. He's a pretty heavy favorite, 8.5 K prop, and he's been excellent pretty much all season long. Just had one of the most dominant outings in all of baseball this year. His last start versus Chicago Cubs, where he struck out like 15 or 16 bats, scored nearly 50 DraftKings points. His xFIP on the season is just low 2s, Sierra around 2.5, 36.1% K rate, a walk rate below 4.5, ISO below .080. I mean, the guy's just been phenomenal all season long. A 50% ground ball rate, 23% hard contact rate, and less than half a homer allowed per 9. And if we're looking at St. Louis's splits in the season, like I said, they don't really strike out too much, only a 22% K rate, but a 151 team ISO and an 87 WRC plus. So Corbin Burnes, over $10,000, yes, but honestly, I think he should be like 11 something K on today's slate. So I am pretty much just locking him in and riding or die with Corbin Burnes today. Then Alec Manoa, $8,600. My preferred pairing today is more than likely going to be Corbin Burnes with Alec Manoa in cash games. I feel like that's probably the best way to go. I love the upside with Manoa. I like this price point quite a bit. I honestly think he should be closer to 10K. So the fact that he's $8,600 feels like a pretty good value in my opinion. He's a very heavy favorite here. I think the Blue Jays stack does look pretty good, which they do pretty much each and every single day, but they're just super, super expensive. So I don't typically bring them up too much, but you can always play them. But team total below 4 here, 6.5 K prop. Looking at his numbers on the season, the ERA has been really good, about 2.5, but the xFIP and Sierra about a 1.5 higher, but I think he'll be just fine here versus Washington. Outside of a couple bats, it's a pretty watered-down lineup at this point since they got rid of pretty much everybody and Castro got suspended. But close to a 30% K rate. The walks are a bit up there at 9%, but only giving up a 156 ISO. And I mean, Washington doesn't really scare me too much here. And $8,600, I think he's a pretty solid play in today's slate. Then Huascar Ynoa, $7,300. So he is coming off the IL. His last start, he gave up a few runs, but he went 83 pitches. So I assume he's probably going to get us like, let's say 85, 90 pitches. And if he does that at $7,300 versus Miami, I definitely think he can pay off that price point. It's just picking on Miami here. Touki Toussaint had a fantastic start last time out. He gave up like a leadoff homer versus Jazz. But outside of that, I mean, he was just cruising, getting strikeouts. I think he ended with 25, 26 points, was able to pick up the win. And, well, I don't think Ynoa's going to do quite that. I think he could get us like 15 plus points, and that's $7,300. And compared to the other pitchers on today's slate, I don't think that's bad. I mean, we can always pick on Miami, especially in Miami. It's a very pitcher-friendly park, one of the best in all of baseball. And only a 3.5 implied team total here. He's a slight favorite, 5.5 K prop. And if we're looking at his numbers on the season, you got to keep in mind he hasn't pitched since like May, but he does have a 27.9% K rate. Pretty good xFIP, pretty good Sierra, good ERA. I mean, I know it shows up red here, but when you compare it to Manoa and Burnes, it's going to look a little bit worse. But, I mean, his numbers are just fine. Yeah, the power's a little bit up there, 172. But, again, there's really nobody with power in this Miami lineup. Like, they have a dreadful, dreadful team right now. They're striking out 25% of the time versus righties, only a 90 WRC plus, well below 300, and a 142 team ISO. And got to keep in mind, some of those numbers are inflated from guys like Duvall and Starling Marte throughout the season, and they are no longer there. So Ynoa at $7,300, I mean, that's a very good price point if you can't quite afford the Burnes and Manoa bill. But I think you can today. There's a really good value stack that I will talk about, but I think he's fine at $7,300. But I think that'll be pretty much it for the pitching, so we'll move right over to the bats. And the first stack I want to talk about here is the Colorado Rockies at home in Coors Field versus a lefty in Matt Strahm, a guy we can definitely pick on here quite a bit because some of these guys do have some pretty strong splits. versus lefties. The Rockies put up, I want to say, 6 runs last night. I think CJ Cron hit the game-winning homer, if I remember correctly. It wasn't really that great of a game. The Padres did pretty much absolutely nothing until they had that, was it a 3-run shot from Trent Grisham, I believe, in the 9th to tie the game up, and then obviously Cron hit that homer. But it wasn't really as good of a game as we thought. I think we can go right back to the well here. I'm not as excited about the Padres today, but I think the Rockies are in a pretty good spot. There's no team total out yet for either game, but I have to imagine we're going to be around 6 here. The weather is going to be phenomenal for hitting. I mean, we got like 95 degrees. The wind's going to be blowing out, and you mix the best hitting park in baseball with some real good hitting weather, the ball should fly once again. But I like all these Rockies quite a bit today. If I'm going to guess, like probably like 6 or 6.5 for their team total. And looking at their splits versus lefties, Connor Joe over a 200 ISO. He went deep yesterday. He's only $2,800. You can play him at first base or outfield. He's pretty much a cash game lock for me. Brendan Rodgers, a 389 ISO. Trevor Story, a 276. Charlie Blackmon, he's someone you can probably skip over, but if you're doing a full stack, I don't hate it. CJ Cron, 239 ISO to lefties. Ryan McMahon, 173. Sam Hilliard, a 333 ISO. Diaz, 171. So all these guys look pretty good versus lefties. We're at home. It's Coors Field, best place to hit in all baseball. It's going to be hot. I think all the Rockies make a ton of sense today. And then on the flip side of this game, we have the San Diego Padres facing up versus German Marquez, who's not really a pitcher that I like to pick on too much. But again, it's Coors Field. The Padres, they're on the road. It's going to be like 90-something degrees. The wind's blowing out. It's going to be very, very optimal hitting conditions, so I don't really like to pick on Marquez too much. I still think he could give up a few runs in this game, and then once they get to the bullpen, it'll definitely get a lot easier because this is one of the worst bullpens in all of baseball. But all the Padres here are pretty much in play. Marquez is a guy you want to use lefties against, so Adam Frazier, Jake Cronenworth, Eric Hosmer, Trent Grisham are probably the preferred targets here, but obviously you can always play Fernando Tatis, one of the best players in all of baseball. He's my highest projected bat tonight, so if you want to fit him in, go for it. Manny Machado, super expensive, but again, if you're full stack in Padres, don't really want to leave off the righties, but if you are playing cash games today, guys like Adam Frazier, Jake Cronenworth do look pretty good. Then moving on to a very expensive stack here, we have the LA Dodgers versus Will Crowe. He's just not a very good pitcher whatsoever. He's giving up over a 200 ISO in the season, a good amount of hard contact, over 2 homers per 9, xFIP sitting around 5. I mean, he's a guy we can definitely pick on. I pick on Will Crowe quite a bit. It typically works out pretty well. Unfortunately, no Mookie Betts in the lineup. He is on the IL, but this is still a very loaded lineup. It's just quite expensive. A lot of guys around 5,000 to the upper 4K range. There's a few cheaper options down low, but even then, everyone's above 4K here, just in the projected lineup. Obviously, that could get switched around by the time the game starts, but Trey Turner here, $5,000. That's actually not a bad price point for Trey Turner. If you want to play him, no problem with that. Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Corey Seager. I like that price on Corey Seager. I think he should be around $5-something thousand. So $4,600. Betting cleanup here in a left-hand righty matchup. I think Seager grades out very, very well. Will Smith, one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. Chris Taylor, Cody Bellinger, he's been better of late. Only $4,200, just hits it near the bottom of the order these days. And AJ Pollock. I mean, the whole lineup is in play. We have a team total of close to 6. And this is definitely a very good spot versus Will Crowe tonight. Moving on to a value stack here, and to be honest, point per dollar-wise, these guys grade out the best for me on the entire slate. They get a great matchup versus Eli Morgan, a guy that allows a ton of power. We have a team total above 5 here, and just look at the prices on all these guys. Max Kepler, low 4K. Brent Rooker's in the 2K range, low 3K for Jorge Polanco, Josh Donaldson. 2K something for Luis Arias. Mitch Garver still in the 3K range. Like, all these guys are dirt cheap. The most expensive guy is Max Kepler leading off at $4,200. Like, I love the value we can get with this team today. Point per dollar wise, like I said, stacks the very best on today's slate. And if you want to use Dodgers, you want to use Padres like Tatis, Machado, you want to fit in guys like Corey Seager, Trey Turner, you're going to have to find some value bets, especially if you're paying up for a guy like Corbin Burnes today. And the Minnesota Twins are where I find myself going because I love these price points. The matchup is very good. It's a decent park to hit in Minnesota. And if we're looking at Eli Morgan's splits on the season, I mean, this is a guy that we can pick on. ERA's around 6.5, xFIP's above 5. He's got an okay 22% carry, but giving up over 300 ISO in the season, a 55% fly ball rate, 2.25 homers allowed per 9, and a 37% hard contact rate allowed. So you can give me pretty much all the Twins here. Now, when you mix in these price points, I mean, they just fit in your lineups real nice. Love Kepler versus righties. Wouldn't be surprised if he has a leadoff homer. Jorge Polanco, love the price point there. Switch hitter, Josh Donaldson, batting cleanup, a lot of power there. Arias, I mean, he's batting around 300 this season. He's below $3,000. So pretty much everyone's in play here. And this is the stack you go to kind of mix in with an expensive stack to make things work today. The last stack I want to talk about here is the Houston Astros on the road in KC versus Daniel Lynch. Just not a great lefty. I mean, he hasn't really given up a ton of power this year, but the ERA is not great. The xFIP isn't either. The strikeout rate's nothing super impressive. So I'm kind of preferring the righties. Jose Altuve, he's pretty expensive, but he can hit left-handed pitching pretty well. Michael Brantley, I prefer him versus righties. The price is actually coming up. He was like $3K, $3,300. Now he's $3,600. I don't know if DK is watching these videos, but maybe I should stop complaining about the price tag too much, because I like it when he's really cheap, because we can always just plug him in and get our free points each and every single day. But it's a lefty on lefty spot. But if you want to play him at that price point at a full one stack, don't mind that at all. Carlos Correa can hit lefties fine. Jordan Alvarez, he's fine versus either lefties or righties. Diaz, I like that price point quite a bit. He's only $3,300, and he's actually been pretty strong this year. I mean, he's batting .295 with a .358 WOBA. 200 ISO. He went deep last night, and he's hitting in a decent spot in the order. I think Diaz is certainly in play at that price point. Yuli Gurriel returned recently. He's batting .325 when the season has always been fine versus lefties. And then you have some lineup fillers at the bottom here, but they're dirt cheap if you just want some free righties. And with the team total of 5.5 on the road here, I think they're definitely in a strong spot. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so already. If you want to follow me over on social media, you know how to do so using the handles in the bottom hand corner of your screen. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below in the description for that if you do want to become a member. And don't forget, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. You can get a free money bonus up to $100 at either prizepicks.com or use the link down below and use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But that'll be it. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday.